thought this is probably going to go.
Yeah.
Welcome to the 2 Decades Too Late podcast, everyone. I am Brad, hanging out with Josh. This is the podcast where Josh and I review albums that are mostly metal for whatever it's worth that are turning 20 years old. We review them based on 4 different parameters, 5 points from each of us per parameter for a total of 20 points per person and 40 points overall.
Yeah.
That's such a better way to say that than however I said it the last time. It was awful. But this week we are doing Where You Want to Be by Taking Back Sunday.
My notes say it's called Terrifier, not because I copied it from Pig Destroyer and didn't bother to change it. That's not at all indicative of how I expect this to go.
Oh, man. This is a weird one for me because A Decade Under the Influence and This Photograph is Proof are both songs I always kind of liked. So, whereas I never really liked My Chemical... Okay, well, before we even get into it, I found myself wanting to compare this to My Chemical Romance for no other reason than they were within similar orbits to one another at the time. They're not the same thing.
No.
They're not the same genre of music, but generally speaking, anyone who I knew at the time liked one, liked the other.
Right.
I think. But I guess I'm learning at this point that may not even be true, and that just may have been an assumption of mine. So if I compare them a lot, that's why. If that seems like nonsense, fair. I'm not even arguing that fact. When I added them to the list, I felt similarly about them.
Yeah.
Or at least I thought. I thought I was going to go into My Chemical Romance hating it, and I thought I was going to go into this liking it. And, well, we'll get into it.
Can't wait to see where we end up.
Oh, man. Tell me about it.
So starting from the top, Taking Back Sunday. I think that's who this is. Yeah. Long Island, New York, where they started.
I don't know why that was. You were so disinterested right from the beginning. The fact you're like, I guess this is Taking Back Sunday. Anyway, continue.
Formed in 1999, so active for 5 years at this point, which is a decent amount of time, to have your feet under you and be grooving, so the kids say. One prior release, Tell All Your Friends, in 2002. They appear to still be active. Yeah, cool.
I didn't know that, actually.
Their wiki says to present. But
and they had an album in 2023, so... Damn. Yeah, so they're still going.
They have still not taken back Sunday, I suppose. They're not finished yet.
I guess not.
So dumb. Kind of falling...
Oh, man.
So you mentioned lumping them in with My Chemical Romance, which I totally would have said is a fair thing to do. But like you said, they're not the same genres. This falls more to the pop punk, emo, kind of actual emo, not just anything that's not metal in 2004 was emo.
Yeah, they were really along that post-hardcore thing that My Chemical Romance definitely were not. They were way more punk-oriented. I guess they'd be post-punk, probably.
Yeah, pop punk, post-apocalyptica. I don't know.
Yeah.
This album came out on Victory, which I was surprised about, and then I looked up the line card for Victory, and man, what a breadth of artists over the years.
Oh, just every direction you can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
The fact that an album can at one time have Between the Buried and Me on it, and Taking Back Sunday or A Day to Remember. Honestly, just based off memory, I could probably talk about that for an hour because it was just it was them and Trustkill and Ferret, and that was it.
That's true.
At the time. Well, Metal Blade's always been a thing, but in our particular field of vision.
Right. Yeah. So that's a little bit about the band. Band members: Adam Lazzara, lead vocals; Fred Mascherino, lead guitar, Eddie Reyes, rhythm guitar, Matt Rubino, bass guitar, and Mark O'Connell on drums and percussion. If I'm not mistaken, Matt Rubano, and Fred Maraschino Cherry are new for this album versus the last album. And
yeah.
So we can talk a little about their contribution to the sound overall.
Well, yeah, and honestly, the Fred maceration, his contribution specifically might be my biggest point of contention on this whole album. Not because he's bad at it or anything like that, but like
he kind of took over that second voice deal for them, didn't he? Yeah, okay.
He did, yeah. And I think they had like a falling out because, everyone feels like they're more important than the next person when they have that much to contribute. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. It is what it is. I didn't delve into it enough to be able to comment, I guess, or weigh in. But
you're going to find a lot of this episode. Brad and I just honestly couldn't be bothered. And we'll tell you a little bit about why, maybe, if we even know. But
yeah, it's hard. It's honestly kind of hard to. So we kind of switch around depending on the episode, whether we're going to do a track by track first. I think that's kind of the way we're going, to do a track by track after like an introduction. Last week, notwithstanding, I think we did the opposite. But we're still trying to iron this out, obviously. But I don't feel like the track by track is really going to be that impactful for me anyway.
This album doesn't really lend itself to that because at least to my ears, most of the tracks sounded the same.
Yeah, and like again, back to the My Chemical Romance thing, like I found them doing a lot of the same things from track to track.
Yeah.
A lot of the same song structures, a lot of the same, let's do an upbeat on the chorus or let's do a downbeat on the chorus or whatever it is. But it was still fun and kept me engaged.
Yeah.
It had an energy to it that was infectious. And even if it's not your normal wheelhouse, it was just a good time.
It was, yeah.
I did not have a good time listening to this. And again, it's funny because two of the songs I've never not really listened to. And I liked them. But it turns out when you listen to an entire album of just pure whining about how you wanted to sleep with this chick, but maybe not that chick, but this chick maybe, it's like, sorry, I didn't mean to say chick that much. I'm more applying it to these dudes because I don't know if everyone remembers this, but this was a time where, I mean, you go to a Paramore show and they play Misery Business and she doesn't say the line about once a whore, you're nothing more. She covers her mouth and she recognizes that the lyrics were short-sighted at that time. But lyrics from this era of this post-hardcore pop punk, post-punk era, screamo, emo, again, My Chemical Romance notwithstanding, because they were great, they're terrible and pretty misogynistic. Whether they're meaning to be or not, this one's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, like, if
I had a note here actually along those lines, not specifically pertaining to the content of the lyrics, but like just the fact that there were any. My note was like, there's substance to it. Like this guy was writing about, his emotions, emo, and how he felt about things and his experiences. But I also said, like, I just couldn't be bothered to delve into it. To whereas, like, My Chemical Romance, I was really excited because that dude was actually, like, writing from two places. One, from a concept of a creative, like, expression. And then two, from a personal experience that drastically affected his life. And like you said, like, this is a lot more just, like, whining about, like, my girlfriend and I broke up and then we still went to a concert together and it was an awkward car ride. Like those aren't on the same level and they're not engaging in equally that way.
So So I'm just gonna just right up front before I have a lot of negativity on this album. This and again, I went into it without that at all. That was not my expectation. So I just want to make it very clear that I actually went into this thinking I would enjoy it, and I didn't.
I think My Chemical Romance kind of spoiled us in that regard. Like, oh, these will all be great.
I know. I tend to agree with you. Here's what I think about these lyrics. I stopped reading them after a while, but this is a person or people that think they are very clever, and they are not.
No.
This like certainty of self-perceived brilliance is asinine. And it's like there was an interview with Keith Buckley from Every Time I Die. Well, it used to be in Every Time I Die. I don't even remember what his new band's called now. It's not very good so far, by the way.
Something Eyes. Them Eyes.
Yeah, that sounds right.
1,000.
Better Lovers is really winning that.
Yeah, they won the
duel.
breakup. Yeah,
for sure.
Many Eyes.
He had
many eyes.
Many eyes.
He has
That's right.
many faces.
That one I do remember off the top of my head. But like he had a thing where he said at the beginning, every lyric I wrote, I really envisioned someone getting tattooed on their body, and that's how serious I took it, and I overdid it on my metaphors and what have you. I think these dudes were trying to do that and failing miserably.
Yeah.
But I think that was just, I think everyone was trying to do that at the time, so I'm not like necessarily blaming them for it. But then again, it's just, I don't know. It's like, I don't know how often I can listen to a dude talk about how brokenhearted he is while also talking about how should I cheat on you or not? And it's like, it's just gross. So it's not very good that direction. I find to the second vocalist guitar player and why that was a point of contention. This is like the musical equivalent of the Gilmore Girls to me. I couldn't get into the Gilmore Girls very much because it seemed like every episode was just constant quips back and forth between the two. And it's like no one ever stopped talking 29 minutes or whatever it was, 21 minutes for a syndicated show.
They talk so fast, but they talk so true.
And that's fine. But like, this is a fatiguing album to listen to for that exact reason. Like, can you not let your own music breathe for 2 fucking seconds?
Right.
Like, why do you both have to be constantly doing vocals all of the time? Like, it's eventually you're not adding anything. Like, it's cool if you did that in moments to add like a texture or an element to your composition. That'd be so cool. And instead you just start doing it at the beginning, and you both are just so clever that you just can't stop doing it for the whole thing. And it's like, my God.
So this is like the album for them too, isn't it? Or my perception is that like this was the Taking Back Sunday album.
I think I think they initially broke through with the one before it because they had that cute without the E or whatever
that's
single.
them, huh?
That was on the one before it, I believe.
Okay.
I'm probably just talking out of my ass on that. Maybe I should look at that.
I can
Tell
look at
all
it right
your
now.
friends. Let's see. Yep, cute without the E.
Okay.
So
that one I remember for sure.
yeah, but I think this is the one where they blew up, and that's why I knew those 2 songs, because they were singles from the album.
Yep.
I
remember Ghost Man
on
third too. I know more of Taking Back Sunday than I even thought.
Yeah, fair. So yeah, I don't this was 40 minutes and 54 seconds that I'm not saying I wish I had back, because at least we got to record an episode off of it, but I didn't enjoy it.
I don't either.
Like, yeah, his voice is whiny from the get-go. It's like there are times when it's not, and there are times where it's dynamic. Again, there are a lot of stuff that works, but if you didn't just beat it to death for the entire 41 minutes essentially, maybe it would have been interesting and kept me engaged, but instead you did the same shit over and over. Now again, if you're not into metal and you go listen to a metal album, you're going to say the exact same thing. Believe me, I get it. I understand.
For sure.
I'm not saying anyone out there should not like this. I've heard worse things.
Yeah.
I'm just surprised with the optimism that I went into it with, and what the reality of that optimism really brought.
So when it first came on, like immediately popped into my head, like, oh, this sounds like Brand New. Oh, this sounds like Boys Night Out. Oh,
Boys
this
Night
sounds
Out.
like The Used.
Funeral for a Friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I eventually got to like, oh, this is a C- copy of The Used. Is it like, are they the copiers or are they the people being copied? Like,
sure. I think you can easily say that none of those bands were the copy or the copier of each other, because what they were really doing was listening to Thursday and Fugazi, early Blink 182.
Yeah.
And, like coming out of it with those influence. And I think this is a good representation of what I'm assuming their influences are. I guess I didn't really look into it, but if this isn't
extremely of the genre.
Yeah. So if that's a genre you truly enjoy, then I guess this probably is perfectly fine. Again, if you like it, that's awesome. I don't know. And I'm sure maybe there's a nostalgia factor in play that I don't have, possibly. Yeah. It's not all terrible or anything. It's just like when you start off with an idea really within like the first 15 seconds of the first song and you just beat that idea to death.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just can't. I didn't find the ride in it. Like there was no. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a structuring device. It's a thing you do over and over. It's like it differs from a concept album in that way.
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so when you take two songs in my case and you like them very much, and I don't know that they're doing that double vocal echo one another, then whatnot all the time, if it's just in two isolated incidents, then it's like, oh, this is really unique. Not a lot of bands can pull that off. And you're both very good at it, like what you're trying to do. But it's like, oh no, you figured out you guys could do that together, and you did it for roughly 41 minutes.
Yeah. So our feelings on this album notwithstanding, and we've probably kind of touched on it and around it a couple of times. Like if you like this, then you probably really like it. And if you like other bands like this is probably totally in your wheelhouse. So Billboard 200, it peaked at number 3 on the Billboard 200.
Pretty damn good.
At the end of the year, it was still on at 186. And this came out in July. So there was July 27th. Shit. So there was a good portion of the year left that this was just hanging out on the chart. And it hit
great.
number 1 on the independent album chart.
That's great.
Yeah.
And it's not really a surprise. Again, I understand that a lot of this is personal bias. Like, none of it's offensive. It's just like, yeah, that's great though. I mean, that's really good for them. But then, like, if you do like this genre, did you listen to Funeral for a Friend? Like, I like Funeral for a Friend. They have moments where they are downright almost ballads, and it's not just whiny. It is like
heartfelt.
But there's a sadness to it, and it's like. But then the next song, they got a heavy part because they're wearing their influences on their sleeves in a way that's a little more interesting to me.
Yeah.
Where they did a good job, Taking Back Sunday, that is, of blending all their influences together and making a cohesive thing. But that's like post-punk and post-hardcore for me. The reason I always liked that sort of thing was because of the ups and downs that they both had. Like there are Thursday songs that are really good and sometimes get chaotic and heavy. And it's like it, and they just, I don't know. They made it very palatable. I will say that there was absolutely no reason from a commercial standpoint for this to be shunned.
No, it's totally inoffensive.
Yeah. Yep.
Unless you're a
chick. But it's almost like, you're right. Yeah. And again, I'm sure maybe I just don't see how deeply they don't mean it that way. I don't fucking care. I just don't. It's obnoxious. They sound like little children whining about like how their mom wouldn't buy their candy bar at the grocery store, so they bitch about it the entire car ride home.
Yeah,
like,
these are not deep emotions that they're exploring, but they're broad emotions that I guess everyone's kind of either felt or thought at some point or like can identify with in some way. But I think to your point about a Thursday song, like they're not following it with the music that they're writing. The music that they're writing is hyper palatable, and like the things are so broad. It's like it's so inoffensive that it's not even original.
Yeah. And again, in 2004, that might have been exactly what this niche of fans wanted, something that they could really latch on to, where they could show their friends, and everyone's cool with it, and that's, again, it's great. It's funny. I'm being negative, but I almost have so little of an opinion that I would never fault anyone for liking it or hating it. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I got through it, and I just, yep, that was music for 41 minutes.
Ish.
Yeah. And the least interesting album we've listened to for this podcast. So
by far, yeah. And we listened to Necrophagous, which was uninteresting in a different way.
Yeah.
It'll show up on the jam session, I think, and we'll talk about it a little bit. Jam.
I'm glad you said that, because actually I didn't even think about this. For if any of you know us, or me in particular, I don't want to speak for you, but like technical death metal is probably my favorite genre of music, or subgenre.
Yeah.
So Necrophagous is beloved by me because we just wouldn't have what we have without them.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we listened to the Necrophagous album, and it's great.
Amazing.
But it's so kind of the same thing the whole time. Like, they found their niche of technical death metal, and people have ripped it off and expanded on it and whatever it is, that we didn't know if we had enough to talk about it for a half an hour to an hour.
Right.
That's not to say it wouldn't be all praise for maybe 25 minutes, but it's like, go listen to that album if you're into technical death metal, and you will like it.
Yeah.
And if you listened to it in 2004, I'm sure your brain exploded.
Right.
Because there were things to compare it to, but not necessarily apples to apples. Yeah, so we just know that we love that album, but we also recognize that we couldn't have talked about it for that long. I didn't see that happening here when I started. Even it was by like the third or fourth song, and by then we've already decided we're doing it, and it was a huge record. I mean, it was, like you just said, it was massive. So I guess we're not going to not talk about it, but it's like, just know that on the other end of that, there are also things we truly love that we can't do much of a better or more interesting take on, because it just is what it is.
So the reviews that I found kind of allude to this same thing too, and it's funny because like most of the reviewers' comments it's like a 3 out of 5, just so middle of the road.
Sure.
And on those same reviews and websites, like the user reviews are unequivocally 4.5 out of 5.
I believe it. Yeah.
But couple of the quotes from some of those, like, I have seen, seems like most reviewers, this is mine, not a quote, but it seems like most reviewers are like, hey, this isn't good. It's not bad, but it's not good. Whereas most of the users are like, this is the best ever. It touches all my feelings and my eyeliner.
Oh, that's actually kind of mean, but yeah, that is a little harsh. Yeah. I'm not going to insult anyone in that way for whatever it's worth. That's a little brutal, but fair enough.
It's what came to mind.
Yeah. But no, it's a good point out though.
Some of the quotes were like, sometimes comes off as less than distinctive, and the album can sound like a generic soundtrack to generic teenage angst. And then extremely repetitive, with many songs sounding exactly the same. So like,
yeah, you can have a format and a formula that is something that you've worked out and you've hammered out over however long, and you stick to that and still sound interesting. Killswitch Engage has technically been making... Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, they've been making the same record for 20 years, literally. Well, 22 years.
Yeah.
And, well, let's be real. End of Heartache was really when it was fully ironed. Alive or Just Breathing still had a little bit of that learning curve.
Adam D on drums.
In a good way. Yeah, right. In a good way. Both albums are insane. But yeah, they still kept it interesting. it's formulaic, but that doesn't mean it's stale. Those are different things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're not alone. Again, I felt bad. I felt torn on this the whole time because part of me want to be like, I hate this, and I actually said that to you a couple times. But the reality of the situation is, I don't know if I care enough. I don't know if it does anything for me one way or another to hate or love it. It's just, it's music.
I have a comment, and it's gonna be like, I'm not gonna have a lot of content for the review, so I'm gonna save my content for the review.
Good call. Well, again, what little track to track breakdown I'll give is that, like, so I will say new American classic, track 6. It starts off beautifully. The chord progressions are just so good, and it's such a departure from the previous 5 tracks, and I was loving it. And then he started singing, and it took me out of it completely. Which
I have so many comments on this specific song.
I mean, do you want to get to the review? We can, because honestly, I don't have a lot of track by track breakdown to give.
We can talk about this track because, man.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Is it not so fucking loud compared to the other tracks?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. You can tell that whoever was mixing it hadn't hit the clean guitar in the way that they had to on this, and the orchestral moments, which I love. Again, if this song was an instrumental, it would have been so good. It was a well-written song. It's just, I think his voice shit all over it. Like
it did. And you know how you can tell that for sure? I did not know there were strings on this album. Had no clue. I was reading about the production. The producer like pushed for the strings. He's like, you guys could really use some strings on this. I was on my 3rd listen because before I was like, there's fucking strings on this? And I love strings in a song. And you're right. Yeah. I did not know they were in this song because his vocals just took a shit all over it. My beautiful strings.
And it's so well done and well written. And
except the bells.
I mean, the song is, well, I mean, but even then, it was well put. Like, if you're gonna have them, that was the right spot to have them.
Absolutely.
I just thought like I don't need anybody whining over this. Like, I just it's conveying in my opinion, a real emotion for the first time, maybe in 5 tracks on an album, where they're trying to, and they certainly think that they are, but really it wasn't until track 6 that I felt the actual emotion coming out of the song at all.
Yeah, and the lyrical content doesn't support the emotion that the music is trying to convey.
In any way, shape, or form. No.
Cool.
Yeah, good. I'm glad we both landed on that one as a point of importance.
So fuck that song.
Yeah. I guess, yeah. Otherwise, I just don't have a lot to say. I mean, track 11, the last song on the album, Slow Dance on the Inside, is very Thursday. And so I kind of like it a little more because it seems like they're more emulating a specific sound rather than blending a few sounds together.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how also you can have your first song on the album be a reference to Star Trek and be so whiny. Even Star Trek people are not whiny like this. Like, they might bitch that actually in season 4, episode 2, it wasn't the whatever. Like, I understand that, but at least there's a level of intellect involved. Yeah, I don't. If I were a Star Trek fan, I would be actually personally offended by that song title being on this album, probably. Like, we don't even need to get girls, and we're still not as whiny as you are. So, like, yeah. I'm just kidding.
Bonus
Star
mosh.
Trek kids are
like, you're not moshing. Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, is that a tongue-in-cheek thing about? Again, a lot of the lyrical content on this come across as so pretentious, and so holier than thou. Like, they're trying to say this deep thing when they're not, at all. I understand that they probably thought that they were, but it's just not. It doesn't matter.
You can go back to the butthole cut, the Shai Hulud cut.
You're damn right. That's how you be pretentious, people.
Yeah.
You want to be pretentious, you do it in a way that someone can be annoyed by it but cannot argue with you.
Right.
That's the thing. This is, I'm annoyed by it and you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? So, anyway. Also, track 2, bonus mosh. My first note, just in all caps, is so whiny.
Yeah.
And then my second note is, this sounds exactly the same as the last song, and I really have nothing else to add. And those are my 2 notes for that track.
Yeah. And as much as like these sound like the other bands that I mentioned, the used brand new Boys Night Out, I genuinely like all of those bands.
Same.
I enjoy listening to them.
Same.
Like, just something about this does not cut the mustard.
Right, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not shitting on a genre of music. Neither of us are. Trainwreck?
Yeah.
Boys Night Out is one of the best albums ever made.
Yeah, for sure.
And it falls dead within this genre. No doubt about it. I mean, they are contemporaries of one another.
Yeah.
That is inarguable. Go listen to them both side by side and tell me which one keeps your interest longer. I don't, again, unless you have the nostalgia factor, unless this was something you were into at the time, I get why most people back then missed Boys Night Out. They were like the,
they were an outlier. Yeah.
Actors. Yeah.
And it is a concept album. And there is like a formula to it.
Yeah. But there's
so you tell that to all those songs. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, so again, we don't hate this genre of music. That's never been a thing.
And his voice sonically is kind of whiny, but he is not whining.
Yeah, I would actually say that the dude from Taking Back Sunday has an objectively better voice than the guy from Boys Night Out, but
Agreed.
I enjoy listening to that dude.
I'll give you that.
Than I listen to this guy. Yeah, like he's a better singer, but that doesn't mean I enjoy it more. Because I don't. So, I don't know. But you know what I guess the moral of this story is? If you haven't heard Trainwreck by Boys Night Out, go listen to it.
Definitely do that.
It's really, really good. And read the story of the concept and the lyrical content. And be sitting down and be ready to have your heart broken. Because never doesn't get me.
Definitely get a box of tissues for that. That will hit you in the actual feels.
Yep. All right. Well, I just see no reason to prolong it. You want to get to the review?
Let's get to the review.
Awesome. All right, Josh, what did you think of the artwork for this here album?
I don't like it.
All right. If I may. If I may. My first thought was, why is there a naked baby on this album?
Absolutely, yeah. It's really off-putting.
It is. But my second thought was, a lot of people at this time in this genre were influenced by Nirvana, so maybe there's a little bit of a nod there to Nevermind.
I had
but at least you're not sure.
Nirvana.
Yeah. Yeah. So the idea, and I looked into this because we've talked about this a lot, or I've talked about this a lot, rather. I like any artwork that's drawn, painted, or whatever it is. So I immediately at least take it, like, I start at a middle ground at the worst, because I do find it to be a well, drawn, well implemented piece of artwork. It's not bad.
Take the kid out of it. It bumps it up to like a solid 5. Like, the kid does nothing to add to the concept for me.
Yeah. The only thing that I will say is the idea behind it was a band taking a massive change of direction from one album to the next and redefining who they are. So essentially, it's like this is the newborn choosing a new path, sort of thing, and it's starting over.
Okay.
And like it says, next exit 152 miles on the sign.
Right.
That's a gas station that the vocalist and his friends would stop to hang out when they lived there. And so like there's some personal stuff that I think helps.
Yeah.
And when you know why the kid's there a little bit, again, I don't know why. I mean, I know a newborn child. Well, but a newborn child doesn't have that much hair, so I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a newborn.
One way or another. No. So, you know, I just the naked baby on it. At least it's drawn and not a picture, and can't be sued by someone later in life like the Nevermind album can, because that dude's still trying to sue them.
Yeah.
So, at least there's that. So I appreciate the sentiment. I do think it's well done. I like the font even. I think it suits the album cover and goes along with the art style pretty well.
The font's great. Yeah, it's pretty like indie film.
Agreed. What I don't like it. It's awesome. What are you giving it?
I gave it a 2. I didn't find the backstory, and I don't think the backstory changes my mind a whole lot, just because the music and the lyrical content doesn't back it up. So like my thoughts on Nymphetamine for Cradle of Filth, like the two supported each other. Like the album artwork as a standalone piece of artwork may be better than it is as album art for this album specifically. So I'm sticking at a 2.
Fair enough. I'm not going much better. I got a 3 only because at least it's well done. That was where I pretty much landed. Yeah, so I don't even have anything else to add beyond what we talked about. So, cool. What about the production verse then and now?
Production, so it was produced by Lou Giordano. I didn't find a whole lot about him as having to have done a whole lot else. I mean, he did some other stuff that I was vaguely aware of, but it's fine. But the vocals are so forward, and especially in the song you mentioned, like it's louder than everything else on the album. So the whole thing just kind of has this tin can sound to me where there's not a whole lot going on. It's nothing special. It sounds old to me now in 2024. And like I said, like he advocated for the strings and like I barely hear them. So like he did his part to like support the album production, but the end product is just kind of a letdown for me, so I settled on a 2.
Fair. I went back and forth on this. I don't think it sounds all that old. I think the bass tone helps a lot because I think the guitars are pretty thin, but this is almost not nearly as bad as Cradle, but or not nearly as bad. Cradle was not nearly as bad. But the bass tone's really good. I think the drums sound great on this album. I do also think, for what it's worth, if we're going to compare if I am My Chemical Romance in this, the drummer is great. Like on Taking Back Sunday, I think he's really cool and unique, and he adds a lot of cool shit where I'm like really pumped about it. Like even the beginning of This Photograph is Proof. That drum intro is super cool. I Am Fred Astaire has a really cool drum intro, and I think the drums are produced pretty well. But even still, the vocals are very. Now I'm always weird about vocals being too forward anyway, but there's that fine line where like equipoise, like. You know, that album is amazing, but those vocals are just buried underneath everything. And it's like, there is that line where I don't know if it's better to have them stand out while you can still hear everything else. Boy, I didn't put enough thought into this on an actual rating. I just had my feelings toward it. Because honestly, I could talk myself into a 4 on this. I really don't mind the production, but I'm going to land on a 3.
All right. And I'll give it to you, like, you mentioned a couple of times the musicianship, like this album, the songwriting is, and playing, we'll say playing more than songwriting. The musical playing is very tight. Like they did a good job.
Yes, I agree. And there are times when the music writing is really cool.
Yeah.
Once you start doing that back and forth whiny bullshit, I just like, it takes me so far out of what the song can have a mood that is a mood I'm intrigued by. And then as soon as you start complaining about what mattress you're laying on with what girl, I'm just like, well, you killed that one.
Right.
Put another, assassination for that song, and we'll move on to the next one and hope they don't do it again.
And we reviewed Converge, so let's not think it's like just vocals here.
No, that was terrible. There was just enough to make up for it in a lot of other ways, and like it blended well at times. There are times on this where it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the impact at the time, Brad? What are you gonna give it?
God, I mean, it's a 1.
Okay.
I didn't listen to it then. I liked those 2 songs for a long time, then realized it's because I was listening to them in a vacuum. And turns out every song sounds pretty much exactly like that.
I would have rather listened to them like with an actual vacuum on in the background.
Oh my God. Oh man.
Yeah.
I wish I had like a kazoo to make that like, or whatever that pull thing. Yeah. That's not a kazoo. No. Anyway.
It's a slide whistle, actually, as it turns out.
Slide whistle, that's it. You mean the whistle that you slide? Yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah.
So you said a 1?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, if you guys have been here for a minute, you know what the last one is, and it will be enjoyed listening today.
Oh, we didn't even do mine for impact at the time.
Oh yeah, what was your impact at the time? I assumed. That's my That's my bad.
I gave it a -5.
Well, we can't give it a -5.
Now, hear me out.
Oh my God. This is gonna come across like we hate this so much, and I can't make it clear enough that I'm just so agnostic toward it.
So I gave it a -5 because we so actively rebelled against it and its ilk at the time. So like I avoided this like the plague, and even today I'm not even regretting that decision. Like My Chemical Romance, if that's all that I missed out on by avoiding this like whole thing as a whole, I'm okay with that. Like I paid that price.
Yeah.
And I can always come back to it.
Fair.
But like we did have a very counterculture, antithetical approach to this band specifically. Yeah. Probably in large part because they were commercially successful at the time.
True. Yeah, we were dicks.
Yep, super dicks. But sometimes you're still not wrong, even if you're a dick.
True enough. Well, I mean, God, put that on my tombstone.
Right.
Sometimes you're not wrong, even when you're a dick.
Yep.
I'm sure most of the people that know me for 5 minutes would probably agree with that.
What do you want on your tombstone? Pepperoni?
Death? Well, you know about death.
I'm sticking with the -5, by the way.
So I'm going to put a 1.
You do what you want, but it says -5 on my sheet.
How much did you enjoy listening to it today?
I actually gave it a 2 for today.
Okay.
So I just, like we've said, I found it so inoffensive that I can't justify giving it a 1 because I don't have like active hatred toward it. But I can't justify giving it any higher than a 2. It literally does nothing. Like if somebody followed me around playing this all day for an entire day, like on full blast with the speakers, I would hardly take notice of it apart from everything else that goes on in my day-to-day life. Like there might be bits and pieces where I was like, the fuck is that? But like 10 seconds later, I'd be tying my shoes and I'd be infinitely more engaged. So, I mean, like, it's a 2.
Yeah, I had exactly the same. I couldn't give it a 3 and I couldn't give it a 1, so I gave it a 2.
Right. Very,
that's as much of a story.
Yeah.
So I have to give.
In the way that reviewer gave Cradle of Filth a 7, like trying to be as objective as possible, like if you're a fan of this genre, like add 3. If you're not, subtract however much more you hate it.
Fair. Well, I'll tell you, Josh is ending up with a 7 or a 2. If you're counting the -5, which will not be canon, but let it be known that Josh does think this should be a -5. And I actually don't disagree with your logic. Without rules, there are chaos. There is chaos. So,
we're
like,
supposed to be living in a society.
Oh man, these pretzels are making me thirsty. And I gave it a 9 for a total of 16. I don't remember our scores off the top of my head. I know I did a rundown 2 weeks ago, but I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and think this is probably the worst one so far.
It's probably pretty bad. I mean, My Chemical Romance had a 28.
Well, there you go. I mean,
Cradle of Filth, 27. Cradle of Filth, I think, was our lowest one to date.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. That's very interesting, actually. I didn't know that. Huh. Well, that's
that.
Man, that is interesting. Well, I mean, if we're gonna carry on the thing, oh yeah, and Converge, You Fail Me got 27 also. So
okay,
we had 2 with a 27. And just think,
16.
I think we shit talked. Yeah, we shit talked Converge more than we shit talked this. I would almost, maybe not guarantee, but again, music is supposed to make you feel something, in my opinion. That's why it's been such a huge part of my life for so long. And when it makes you feel almost absolutely nothing but annoyed at times, I got nothing. Hatred would even be preferable almost.
Yeah.
I can find respect in something that causes me to feel hate. 16 total. I guess not for nothing. What was your favorite song on the album?
I picked The Union. It might stand out just enough to make you notice. If you can call that a favorite, then we will. So there's a little bit of musical creativity in there that is enough to catch my attention and be like, okay, I guess we can vibe with this.
Yeah, well, that was mine too. So I'll pick something else because I have a couple backups. Because I'm hoping we can add 2 songs to the playlist every week. You know what I mean? And if we can't, we can't. Honestly, if you could take his voice out of it, New American Classic would easily be my favorite song. Easily. Absolutely. It would not be a difficult decision at all.
Nope.
But I'll go with A Decade Under the Influence. I've liked it. I didn't hate it by the time I got to track 3. I've just always liked it. It's still a song that I'm probably never going to hate, just because that one is one of the few that does give me a little bit of the nostalgia factor. So, Decade Under the Influence it is.
Sick.
And again, the reason we're bringing that up, because that's just a great idea Josh came up with, but also because if you go to Spotify, we have a playlist you can listen to of our favorite songs from every album that we review. It is the TDTL, as in 2 Decades Too Late, --favorite songs. So every week we'll be adding 1 or 2, I guess. I'm trying to get to 2. And we haven't really had an overlap yet. This would be the first time that we've had an overlap. Which is kind of odd. Kind of cool, though.
Yeah.
So we haven't had an overlap yet. If I can justify making sure we don't have one, I will or we will. Maybe we won't at some point. I'm sure that'll happen eventually. But
it's got to, yeah.
So far, 2 songs per album. We're up to 18 tracks because we only started this in 2024. So check it out if you're interested. Excuse me.
Only if you're interesting are you allowed to listen to this playlist. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We post little teasers of the upcoming album for the week, usually Sundays and on album or on episode day, Wednesdays. So follow us there. Tell us how much you hate us in comments, and it'll be a lot of fun. Slide into our DMs.
Yep, and that's at TDTL_podcast for whatever it's worth, if you want to check that out.
Nicely done. So I guess,
yeah.
If you like Taking Back Sunday, brush this one off, give it a re-listen, see if you still enjoy it as much as you did. If you never really listened to them, give it a shot. You might like it. Like I said, it's inoffensive. You might find something in it that speaks to you. That's what music's here to do. Because it doesn't always speak to us doesn't mean you're not in a different place. So
exactly. If you like it, good. Everyone needs stuff like that, man. Like I've got no problem with it whatsoever. And if it's a thing that you enjoy, keep enjoying it, please. I mean, we're just a couple of dudes who have a couple hours every week to do something that's borderline non-productive. So don't worry about that. And keep on listening if you like it. I respect it.
Cool. So with that, he's been Brad, I've been Josh, and we've been 2 decades too late.